From the great halls of their house, there are assembled three who hope to one day be the world's greatest driving heroes. Created from the cosmic legends of the universe comes our team captain, the Vision, Bill Fisher. Their soon-to-be Wonder Woman, Vicki Fisher. Our Captain Marvel and head flight trainee, Jennifer Skripchuk. And our Batman, the master of tools, gadgets, and all things mechanical, our mild-mannered soon-to-be billionaire, Alan Danvers. Their mission, to fight injustice, share what is right and wrong, to get you out of your house and come out racing with them, and serve all mankind. They are the Garage Heroes in Training Team.
Captain's Log Supplemental.
Miss Vicki.
Yes, sir.
You know what?
What?
I've been thinking about this Sentinel system.
Yeah. Tell me about the Sentinel system.
So what I was thinking was, we have the one car that's got the aim dash that's slowing us down. Because installing the aim dash is actually, it probably is easy, but it's quite hard the first time. And we haven't figured that out yet. The Sentinel system is really easy to set up. So what I was thinking was, why don't we put it in the Lemons car? And we'll worry about the aim data information separately. And we'll kind of break it down into a project. Because then we'd have the motorsports video system that we really, really want, and we'd be able to stream it. We just won't have the data inside, but we have the data outside, so we can combine them later. But I think that's a really good solution.
So what does this Sentinel system do?
Well, if it had the aim data, it would have all the data on the screen, and you could see all their telemetry and everything live. But we'd be able to not only record it for viewing after the race, but we could actually watch our car during the race.
Ooh, like on the monitor and everything?
On a monitor, if you were at home and I was at a track, or if you were at the track and I was at home, depends on who gets the little short straw, but we'd be able to watch each other.
It's something I've always wanted to do.
And you know what? If you're driving, you know what you can do on the Sentinel system?
What's that?
You can communicate to me with your hands, and I can't do a thing about it.
Even better.
So, if you need to give a wave or a Jersey wave, whatever you need, we could save it and see it on the screen. And then you can have up to 3 different cameras, and it'll have picture in picture. You'll have the basic main shot out the front window, and then 2 cameras where you put them wherever you want. One could be on the driver, or one could be on the rear view. It's kind of cool.
Then we can upload it onto YouTube.
We could bore millions of people on YouTube.
I love it.
All right. Very well. You know what the only downside I see about this?
What?
Your mom and my mom are going to be panic stricken the entire weekend watching this thing to see if everything's going well.
This is true.
We probably shouldn't tell them.
I like the idea of having a Sentinel.
Mm-hmm. Well, luckily we have maybe 2. Depends on how things go. We're going to try. All right. That sounds like a plan. That's the project. We got to get that ready for the next race.
Sounds great.
All right. Very well. Thank you, ma'am.
Dominating with Dawson.
Dominating with Dawson. I need some dominating with Dawson.
Okay.
Ben, I think we're gonna need a little help. So okay. I brought in, honestly, the best I could do. We have Jeremy.
Okay.
I'm here.
We have Mental.
Let's see. Oh!
I feel like if I'm the best you can do, man.
Yeah.
And
you're high quality. You're high quality, no doubt.
And by definition, the best there ever is, Miss Vicki.
Hello.
Naturally.
Yeah.
Yes.
So
this is how I get out of the tub, people. Just pay
attention. I was just going to say, you're not sleeping in the tub tonight.
Not yet. It's the night is young.
No tub tonight.
We've got time to screw this up. All right. We had a listener write in or call in. I can't remember.
All right.
And these are some of Ben's favorites.
I love hearing from people.
They wanted to know, they got concerns, but they wanted to know, like, how do you tell if somebody's over driving? And especially, how can you tell yourself if you're over driving? And how to stop that? Because I believe the connotation was over driving bad.
Okay, weird. All right, whatever.
Well, I mean, some of us don't ride at the 9.9999 tenths to 10.0001 tenths, Mr. Dawson. So humans, we're dealing with humans here.
It's smart to know when you're overdoing it. Don't you agree, panel? Don't you think it's a good idea to have a good gauge on when you're about to lose it?
Mr. Jeremy.
No, Mental had his hand up. Go ahead, Mental.
Oh,
I was going to pull Jeremy in on this one because Jeremy and I do rights. Well, and I'm not so much right seat instruction, and you learn to pay attention to the physiological conditions. And overdriving, like you said, how they're going to go when they're about to lose it. They could be in complete control and still be just absolutely wearing down your brake pads, the tires, and themselves. And, there's a couple of good indications. One, to find out if you're overdriving the car. Is your name Randy? And if your name is Randy, you're probably overdriving the car, but you're an SCCA Hall of Famer. So that's okay. But in other things,
stories about that.
Randy's
and I love
awesome.
that guy. It's just funnier my way. But one of the things on there, you look over and are their forearms tense? Are they trying to muscle the car to do their will, or are they relaxed? And by looking for those signs in other people, I have trained myself to look for those signs in me. Am I starting to get tense? Do I feel my shoulders starting to bind up? And when I catch myself doing that, it's an old yoga trick. You take the tip of your tongue, put it to the roof of your mouth, and that forces your jaw to open a little bit, which usually makes you aware of the tension in your jaw and your neck. And then you relax. Look at, I'll throw just that one out there as one of any number of indications, but physiological conditions, even manual steering cars that I've had at speed, you shouldn't be tense. You should not be exhausted. It should flow. The steering wheel should flow like those people that do Tai Chi. And yes, your fingers should be, you should be able in the middle of a corner to unwrap your fingers from the steering wheel and still have complete control of that vehicle. Nothing on you should be tense. People think that because driving is a mechanical activity, that it is a mechanical series of steps you take. And no, you hear Ross Bentley talk about the zone and the flow, and that infamous article or the interview with Art and Senna where he talked about how him and the car became one. You should not be tense while driving. And if you catch yourself getting tense, it's because you are probably trying to force the car to do things. And that's a sign of overdriving. And I will guarantee you that if you are overdriving, your vision has gone from 300 yards to probably about 50.
If even that. Yep. So more on the tenseness of
Did you just call me a moron?
driving. Yes.
Moron. Hey, moron.
Your grip, right? Let's talk about that. Mental said you're all tensed, right? And you're squeezing the death out of the steering wheel. The amount of energy that you exert doing that is absolutely insane. Right.
It's your whole body. It's not just your hands. Your whole body is doing that, right?
When you are tightening on that steering wheel, it is your entire body, right? So you're pulling so much energy out of your body, you don't realize it, right? So, and the number one thing that I like to tell people, if you think that you're overdriving, or you don't think that you're overdriving and you're trying to pass everybody on track, you are definitely, without hesitation, overdriving the car. Right? There is no, and overdriving always leads to bad things, right? And now I want to bring it back a little bit more to what Mento was talking about with us instructing, right? And he said that you can, what was your words about?
Physiological indications.
Yes. But about that, and you said, I can't remember your exact words about like the limit, right? So you can think that
it's overdriving is sometimes nothing to do with the limit. Yes.
Right. So you can think that you're driving 7/10 of the typical conditions of the track, but maybe the conditions have changed. Maybe temperature has dropped. Maybe something else has dropped. Well, that 7/10 that you were on is now 9/10, 10/10. And now you have a potential of thinking that you're not overdriving, but you really are overdriving the conditions.
So situational awareness could play a part in whether or not I'm overdriving?
A huge part.
Huh. Gotcha. 10-4. Gotcha. When this question came up, I'm so glad that you guys went to where you went, because like my only answer is like, how much do I hear the tire talking? You know, like I just went to the mechanics of driving. But that's so smart. You know, one of the best things I heard from an instructor early on. This person didn't have a whole lot to teach me about driving, but they kept looking over like, don't forget to breathe. You know, this was early enough on, but I needed somebody to say, hey, breathe, because they could hear me. I'm on the little communicator, and so they were worried that I wasn't taking it easier breathing. They would remind me like, hey, breathe, look up track. You're doing fine with your driving, but remember, keep it natural. And it was really helped me to relax and be in the car, because you're right, it shouldn't be work. As long as there's nothing wrong with the car, you know, it shouldn't be work. I mean, I depowered the rack in my Miata that we all endurance race for years and years. And I mean, even like that, I mean, it's a little bit more of a manual experience. But once you're at speed, you know, in a parking lot, it's kind of a dick to drive around. But once you're at speed, it's fine. So if you're doing something that's a big physical effort on track, you got to start thinking about it. A recent example of this for me was I found myself overdriving. It was 2021. It was my first race after we'd all kind of took a little break from the pandemic, and it was the summer at VR, the race I'm about to miss. And I used to be a guy who could sit in a hot car and race for 2 hours without a cool suit. A couple of years away from the track, I got back. I'm a couple years older. I get out there on Friday practicing, and it's a big deal with AER. You know, you get big, long, open sessions. And I'm out there. I can't stay in a car for more than 30 minutes. Like, I realized I caught myself panting with my mouth open. And I'm like, I don't know what's going on with the car, but I realize I'm sitting here breathing like a forest animal who's about to pass out. So I was like, I'm sure I'm not making good decisions on the track. You know, it's like, so that was a recent example of my own overdriving. It wasn't a skill issue. It was a condition issue. I was like, oh shit. I said, definitely, if I'm only able to just breathe with my mouth open and keep myself alive doing that, I'm sure not making good decisions about what I'm doing, going 140 miles an hour into the backstretch. So I, you know, in those instances, I had to realize that I was overdriving and I needed to bring it in, and we, you know, got a cool shirt for the race and figured out how to do it without, you know, causing a medical emergency for ourselves or 30 people on the track if I lost it, you know. So that's I can definitely speak to the overdriving issue when it comes to the physiological aspects too.
Oh, that's funny.
Sorry, it sucked learning that about myself, but I'm glad I did. Like now I know I got to have a cool start to function in a race car pretty much, unless I'm only going to be in there for like 10 minutes.
Yeah. So, Miss Vicki, what do you think of when you think of overdriving, and some indicators? Could be in the car, could be about the car, could be things you see external to the car. Do you ever see anybody you think is overdriving on the track, and what are your responses to them? Any kind of thoughts?
Overdriving the car, usually to me, it's when somebody kind of goes a little aggro, and they're just plowing. They're just plowing the car. So things happen to the car. Sometimes
What things?
Well, sometimes the vehicles that they're driving are not meant to be driven a certain way. So things happen to them.
What things?
For instance, you could blow the engine because you are ramming or blowing the transmission because you're grinding it. You know, you're just slamming the car. You're not paying attention to the revs. You're
using
overdriving. You're damaging the car.
I've got an even less extreme example than this. And I'll point to myself again, because usually this podcast is about how perfect I am, but I've got these two foils here that maybe can help me. They can be more perfect and I can be less perfect. It's going to be fine. We were racing somewhere recently in my friend's E36 M3, and it was like, hey, the diff, blah, 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 blah. I forgot what it was, but the upshot was, Ben, stay off the curbs, you maniac. And I'm like, I got it. I'll stay off the curbs. And a couple times during my time on the track, I get this little call, like, hey, man, hey, buddy, remember to stay off the curbs because we're watching you. Remember, we can see what you're doing in the car from outside the car. And I'm like, oh, yeah. But I mean, I just needed a reminder. But in this case, overdriving was not something that was just a condition where normally we gallop over every curb and just straight shoot it. But there was some kind of mechanical condition with the car that we were a little iffy on. And the upshot of the weekend was like, let's go have fun, but let's not wreck the diff or whatever the problem was. So, in this case, overdriving was a simple change to what we normally did, but what we normally did suddenly became overdriving, and I needed relatively frequent reminders about, hey, Ben, get off the damn curbs because we're trying to all race this car for the rest of the weekend. So
Right, right.
it's not always obvious, or it's not always blowing the transmission of the whole motor
Yeah.
out. It might just be a, hey, here's what we're doing this weekend, and that includes overdriving this weekend, includes you hitting every curb.
Yeah, there was a particular team that was in Lemons where they kept blowing their engine under one driver because the driver was not taking care of the engine. They had to constantly do engine swaps on it. To me, that's overdriving the car. That's not caring about the car.
Yeah, I have some teammates who have branched off and have built their own car, and they're doing their first race at VIR, and I'm going to leave them unnamed, but you're going to be delighted to meet them for the first time. You'll know who they are when you meet them. But they've got a teammate who they kind of bought in with on this car, and the guy, every time they drive it for a test, he breaks something on it. He's out there trying to drive this endurance car like 10 tenths. And they're like, we got to get this guy off our team. So they're going to race this race with the guy and let him go his own way. But like, we just can't keep breaking stuff every time this guy gets in the car.
Yeah.
Mr. Jeremy.
So another easy thing for most of you listening here that don't think that you're overdriving. If you're off track a lot, if you
it was another car, Jeremy.
Right. If you're off track a lot, if you're constantly breaking one particular thing on your car, if you are making contact with other cars every time you're on track,
it was the other car, Jeremy.
You are overdriving the car. Actually, you're overdriving yourself. You're overdriving your ability to handle the car and the situation.
Right. And you know what? And the car doesn't have to be a super fast, well-built car. It's just the car can't take what you're doing to it. That's overdriving to me. That's overdriving the car.
Our friend Chris, he has a rule, just with what Ben was saying. He has a rule. If you've not built your own race car, you can't drive with us because you may not understand mechanical sympathy. And he spent too many nights at 2 o'clock in the morning fixing something that somebody was trying to carve half a second off and jammed the car into the wrong gear or did something like that. And I'm going to argue another metric. If you find the car cannot do what it did the previous lap, that might be an indication that you're overheating your tires. If it's not slowing down like it did previously, you might be on the brakes a little too hard and you're putting too much heat into them. So, try one of those things where you back off and you start trying to find those brake markers where you're not having to stomp on it. Everyone can throw down a flyer, but this is an endurance racing podcast and we're endurance racers. And remember, not only does the car have to last your entire stint, it's got to last your teammate's stint as well.
Right.
Do you know what? There's a good way of understanding what that is if anybody has watched the movie Ford versus Ferrari, where right. So if you understand when they were building the car for Ford, that's one thing that they kept talking about, the racer that they didn't want to put in because he kept trying to understand how to drive the car. You can't ram the gearbox. You have to massage the gearbox, So that is a good indication of when you're endurance racing on how to take care of a car, So it's worth a watch.
I heard Patrick Long, who was a factory Porsche driver for a long time. I heard him get interviewed like in 2001 when he came from racing Porsche Cup sprint racing in Europe, which is a huge high level deal. And he had come over to do his first American race. I think it was the Daytona 24 for Porsche. But they'd asked him about what's the difference, how is it coming from cup racing to doing this endurance racing? And they had to slow me down a lot. They had to slow my shifts down. They had to slow everything down because I'm used to just bam, 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 bam. Because this engine and transmission only needed to last whatever an hour, or for Porsche Cup racing, this has got to go 24 hours. And I think one of the things that Mental mentioned about being cognizant of, hey, if the car's not able to do it, it could do last lap. Maybe you're overheating your brakes, maybe you're overdoing it with the tires, maybe you're sapping the power of the engine by leaking oil that you don't realize. Whatever it is, I think that's really important because I hope that most of the people that listen to this podcast are Lemons racers, and a lot of times Lemons racers are choosing a platform not necessarily based on proven performance.
Less than ideal.
Well, right, but that's the point. So a lot of times you need to be pretty aware of those type of things if you're out there racing, a Chevy Citation from the '80s, which necessarily wasn't designed for this, and you might be rolling out with a fairly stock prep level. So be ready to kind of
Exactly.
listen for when you're janky rear
feel
drum
the
brakes give up
car.
or whatever. So yeah, I think that's especially
you
pertinent
gotta-
advice for lemons.
So let's make this a little easier, and I'll be that guy.
Don't be that guy, Jeremy.
I'm going to be that guy for all of those drivers that think that you are the best, right? Because we all have a little bit of that in us, right?
I'm right here, Jeremy.
I
I'm right here.
assume I'm going to smoke everybody every time I sit in a race. I'm like, you are all going down.
Right.
I avoid all you people.
So I'm gonna bring a little bit of what Mental said, a little bit of what Ben said, and I'm gonna put it all in one picture. Okay. So let's say that you're on my team and I'm telling you I need you to drive this vehicle 8/10 and no more. Okay.
Oh.
Now 8/10 is not 8/10 of your driving ability. 8/10 is track conditions. 8/10 is brake conditions. 8/10 is tire conditions. 8/10 is shifting conditions, RPMs. 8/10 is everything. You take that least common denominator of that, and that's where you drive it. Okay. If your tires are sliding, you've overheated them, like Mental said. If you notice it's not stopping when it should be stopping, you're beyond that, right? You need to back it down because you're driving beyond the limits of the least common denominator.
That's a good point. Yeah.
So if we go back to an earlier Dominating with Dawson, long ago.
Well, I wasn't there for that one, so don't worry about it.
It's somebody who looked like he was. We reviewed an article by Peter Krause where he started talking about tenths and actually quantifying the tenths. And his
Yeah, that was a
definition,
good one. Yeah.
it was a while back. Oh, Ben remembers now because he likes this episode.
Yeah.
But 8/10, and we always talk about 8/10 kind of lemons-ish, right? Easily sustained level requiring high levels of concentration, attained after a few laps of a race or endurance race where somebody settles in for the battle. The car is sliding, but only at the beginning or end of a corner, not into a corner, through all corners, not on all laps. Generally, laps are within 8/10 to 1.5 seconds apart.
Lame effort level.
Consistent. No, that's the span. Listen to Ben. Ben doesn't do 8. Ben does 10.1. This is a level where people are comfortable going around the track and people can be comfortable taking people around the track. And there's plenty of headroom and margin for error on changeable track conditions.
Good.
8/10 is not sliding your way into the apex of a turn or past the apex of a turn, or even worse, into a car. 8/10 is controllable. So don't go crazy. If you think you're overdriving, you are.
Yeah. If you have to question it, if you're like, hey, am I screwing this up? You probably are. Yeah.
If you think you might be overdriving, you are. Yeah. If you know for a fact that you're not overdriving, but a friend of which you respect thinks you subtly says you might be overdriving, you're overdriving.
The important thing, especially if you have arrive and drives, is just to stress the fact that you have to practice car empathy.
Yeah, I've got stories to tell about that. But what we got to come back for another day is nobody's ready to talk about the much larger, much more rampant, much more indiscriminate problem that exists among racers at our level is the underdriving. We can come back and talk about that another day, though. But I think we do a fair amount of hand wringing about what's going to happen if I'm overdriving the car. But I would like a lot of these people that are underdriving to get up and go a lot faster.
I would think if you're underdriving the car, you're listening to the right podcast. And
wow, I'm right here.
Help you go faster. They're going to the people that you're hearing right now are going to help you go faster.
We would definitely like to. I want better and better competition on the track every day I go out there. So that's what I hope this podcast does.
Ben is not competitive at all. It's fine.
So you guys all say, I think this is either a mark of I'm getting old and senile. You guys are all like, oh, I get in the car and convinced I'm going to be faster than everybody. I usually get in the car going, I'm slower than everybody, but I'm smarter than about 75%. I'm not going to outdrive you. I'm going to out strategize you.
Yeah.
Oh, mental. Yes.
I should have completed the sentence and said, I assume that I'm faster and smarter than everybody because I always assume I'm in a bad car, but I'm better at traffic than anybody. I'm like, I'm going to be out more dastardly and smarter than everybody out here, at least if the car's not fast.
Oh yeah, old age and treachery always overcomes youthful enthusiasm.
Oh yeah,
Every
I will
time.
stick the car there. I will put the car there.
There's I don't know how much you guys have raced against her. She started out in the Gulf Coast. She's out on the West Coast, but actually she's nationwide. Mary Harris.
We met her for the first time.
Oh yeah. I finally got to meet her at Road Atlanta one year, but like after we've been Facebook friends for like a million years. Yeah, she rules.
she is probably one of the most cerebral racers out there. She will catch you in a much slower car. Or if you catch her and she decided you're not going to pass her, it's going to be a while before you get around her because she knows exactly how to use everything around her without overdriving the car, but you'll notice, oh man, it looks like she came out of that corner just a little bit slow. And it was just so she rolled up on a slower car to block you from getting around her.
Yeah.
I have spent so many hours behind her, cursing her very name while admiring her skill as a driver.
Awesome. That's awesome. I didn't know that about her. I'm just kind of knowing her.
Yes, she is playing that 3D Star Trek chess.
That's so cool.
On every racetrack. Yeah.
I love hearing that about her. That brings my level of respect, which is already pretty high. That's so cool.
Admit it, Ben. You're just being nice. That internal voice was saying, "Yeah, you think she's playing 3-metal chess? You better see what I."
Yeah.
Well,
yeah, Ben's
no.
gonna watch me.
Also,
hold my beer.
Described. That's what I give myself credit for being that way. I have no idea if I am, but in my head, that's who I am. So I'm like, I'm gonna go and fuck all these motherfuckers. Who knows what actually happens?
Yeah. Years ago, I was behind her in a much faster car that could not handle quite as well, but I had all kinds of horsepower. And she just kept me back there for 45 minutes at Barber. And even the guy that owned the car got on the phone and said, Mental, there comes a time when you're just flirting. She finally just ran out of traffic to jam me up with. And I and I got to go, well, this has been fun, but America, and I downshifted and got around her, and then I got into some traffic, and lo and behold, I come into Charlotte's Web at Barber, and as I am just really out maneuvering, it was a brilliant maneuver on a Mustang. I was so much better than they were. As I go to squeeze in there, I look in on my driver's side mirror, and there she is, and she has stuck her nose right in between me and the apex. And she just muzzles me out of the corner as we pull away. And afterwards, we're talking. She's like, that was a lot of fun. And I said, yeah, when you stuck your nose in there, you might not have liked the word that I used. And she said, well, I figured it was you and I could trust you. And I'm like, so what you're telling me is just every now and again, I just need to plow into you just to remind you that I'm mental and you can't trust
keep you
me.
honest. Funny. Are we talking about turn 5? Is that what that turn is?
I got you're making me do math in public, but yeah, exactly. Yeah. Charlotte's Web. Yeah, exactly. As you head back towards Hanging Woman. Yes.
We never learned any of the names of the corners. We only went there one time with our team, but we called that one the learning curve because I was the only person not to spin the car there.
It can be done. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Not in sim racing to this point by us, but we're working on it. Very well.
That's cool.
Thank you, Ben.
Thank you. Thanks to everybody. That was a really fun one. Thanks, guys.
That was fun.
Thanks
everybody.
So this is
no,
V.
Seriously.
I was this whole time. I was like, "That's a V." I just figured it out because you did the M. I was like, "Oh, those are letters." I thought this was like Roman numerals or something. I couldn't figure out what the code was.
J.
J.
Or when we get on there, say, Vicki, you're number 1. Jeremy, you're number 2.
You guys can't even pronounce your
Menu
names
3.
in order, and you want me to
I
give
Yeah.
love,
codes.
see, in my world, that's a taco. And that
Do
means
M
whatever
again, Bill.
whatever
Just do M
check
again.
ride you just took, that is unsat because you just got a taco because you did it wrong, unsat.
That's
Mental,
I love it.
Ben.
I gotta tell you that
Okay.
you have given me like one of the
Hey,
best
listen,
advices
let's not
that
talk about the
chilled me
Laguna
out.
Seca cleanup crew. Let's just not talk
No.
about that.
that chilled me out. And I always wanted to tell you this, that you and I pass it on to people too. I said that when really nervous about getting hit on the track or going off the track or whatever, something like that. You told me something, I always remember it and I pass it on just to relax people. I said, listen, this is what a friend told me. It's not if you're going to get in an accident, it's going to be when you're going to get in an accident. Because you could cause it, somebody else could cause it, or something could happen to your car. I said, so just relax about it. You're safe in the car.
Indeed. All right. Anybody got any preferences?
Oh, we're doing another one? Cool.
We usually do 4 or 5 of these at a time.
So
We're-
Man,
Yeah.
I'm
you guys
good. I'm
got
good for
way
one
more
more.
efficient since last
All
time
right.
I was here.
Ben's got
I'm
one.
good. I got one more I can do.
All
so
right.
now that Mental's here,
Well,
Yeah.
we do what we talked about today, Bill.
sure.
Yeah.
How do you know?
I'll move it. I got it.
Okay,
I
hold
already
on,
know.
hold on, hold on, hold on.